Everything looks good. We're live. Mr. Kowal, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. It is 6 p.m. and thank all of you for attending this special joint board meeting tonight. Civic Center Development Committee and the Township Board of September 29th, 2020. This is the second joint meeting of more information to come forward. And at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and I would like to have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
and
and to the republic which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you do roll call of the Township Board, please?
Liz Smith,
Here.
Andrea Voorhees,
Present.
Mike Powell,
Here.
Scott Ruggles,
here.
Mr. Roman,
Here.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Kowal.
Kowal is here. Thank you very much. And tonight's meeting is an electronic meeting being done in conjunction with Governor Gretchen Whitmer's executive order. And we are in compliance with it. And although there are changes in the order, they are not going to affect this particular meeting because at the time this meeting was posted and all of the information went out, we fell under that order. So we are in compliance at this time. So thank you for your understanding of that. I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda as noted.
I'll make a motion to approve the,
Not
agenda.
amended, but the agenda.
Gotta warm up.
I have motion from Andrea Voorhees. Liz, did you support that?
Sure did.
I'll take that as, a yes because I couldn't hear you. Okay, all right. Roll call vote, please.
We have to get
Yes.
we'll call it again.
Yes, roll call vote. Go ahead, Mr. Lilly.
Andrea?
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Kowal.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, public comment at this time. If anyone in the public would like to comment on anything on the agenda at this time, you'll have 3 minutes to state your name and information. You would have to hit the raise your hand mechanism, which is *9. Rob?
Let's see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak. Press *9 if you want to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
Phone number 5670, I believe, is trying to join the meeting with video too. I think that's
Okay.
Rich. And I don't know if he sent a request to be let in, but I don't know if you're able to do anything.
I
with
don't
that.
see him in the waiting room as a video participant. Caller with the last 4 digits 8405 has raised their hand. Press *6 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, excellent. Okay, this is Linda Hyaduk. I am attending on behalf of Senator Jim Runstead. We are really, really excited to see what you have to present tonight. And I just wanted to know that I was here with you, and I'm really, really looking forward to the future in Whately Township.
Thank you very much, Linda, for joining us. Okay, anyone else in the wings? Rob?
No one has their hand raised. Yeah, we'll give it a moment.
I think Rich is in the waiting room now via video. If you see him, I didn't mean
Yes.
to.
Yep.
Okay. Just
Hi,
want to
Rich.
let you know. Okay, thanks.
Okay. No one else has their hand raised at this point.
Very good. Okay. That being said, we will close the public comment and we'll move on to item 6, which is the finalizing the Circus Center RFQ. So, Mr. O'Neill, I'm going to turn this over to you so that we can kind of get the show on the road.
Well, the RFQ we spoke about last time we were together in August, and Howard kind of went through it. We made some tweaks, and it's kind of back before everyone now to finalize so we can move it to the next phase. So I will very shortly turn it over to Howard. He's got a slideshow presentation, and then obviously the RFQ is a part of your packet and is also something we can go through if you'd like to do that as well. So I think Justin's going to share his screen and go through the slideshow whenever Howard is ready for him to do so.
I'm ready. Thank you, Howard. Please proceed.
Okay, first of all, let me say that the presentation that I have basically walks you through the RFQ as it is and being presented. So if we can go to the second slide. Oh, I guess I can do that? No, I can't. Second slide. Our goal is to obtain an interest from a qualified developer. We've taken a different path than what normally happens. I can't tell you, I don't think there's certainly not a week, but I think every other day I get proposals from some jurisdiction someplace that has property that they're trying to sell for one purpose or another or develop for whatever reason. And it comes through proposal and RFQ processes. Somebody has to be looking for that and out searching for that. What we're doing is going directly to people that we've identified as being qualified, pre-qualified in this process. Next slide. So this is just the cover of it. The first real page that has anything on it is just some background information that talks about, that we want a 365-day, 24/7 kind of project, that we have X number of acres, of which 57 are allocated for recreation, which is a major component of this. And we're looking for a partnership from somebody that can work with us through this. And particularly we're looking for a master developer that can be involved in from a financial capacity as well. Next slide. So that really is page 2 of the RFQ. Page 3 and 4 are legalese disclosure statements. They have been approved before in a couple other jurisdictions in Michigan. If anybody has any qualm about any of the wording in there, what it does is just protects all of us. And you can turn it over to your attorney or whatever to take a look at. And that's all that it does, is just protects us from lawsuits, saying we're not responsible for the preparation of the RFQ or anything like that. Okay. Let's turn now to the next slide. Okay, so our section 2 is what we have considered to be essential components of the development process. 2 of them are exactly what you had from the beginning or the inception of your civic center development process, and that is your police, fire related emergency space and structures. And it just says that is a primary component of it, and that if somebody is interested and requires additional information, that we can provide them with additional information. Hopefully by the time this is out on the street, which hopefully occurs very shortly, we have the information and finalized reports from the 2 other consultants so that we can give those reports to them should they ask for that. The second part is administrative and other basic services, which your own offices and other portions of it like that. Let's turn to the next slide. Again, very brief and just summarizes that. The third is a slight difference from what you had originally proposed and what I think Nathan's going to show you in their presentation. And we changed the wording from the last time you've seen this to call it a community senior center. We don't want to get involved in any kind of political situation. We know that the seniors need a new center for themselves, but it also can serve the larger community as well if done properly and serve the whole mass and entirety. So we've combined that into 2. What you have on the next page or 2 about that community center is the justification for it. What we found out from the surveys as to why it can serve the entire community. Having that justification in there is important because the entity the entity that's going to look at this, whomever they may be, and all of them that may look at it, needs to know that there is demand out there for services, because it could well be that, again, they are playing a primary portion of the funding. Maybe they may be involved with that directly with this part of the project as well as the other parts. So we wanted to provide them with the justification to know that it would be successful. The next page, please. Next slide, please. Recreation, we're looking for 365 outdoor and indoor recreation in a sense, and I'll explain that in a moment. But the outdoor, we know we've got seasonal activity, and it really is 365. We can be out there. We've got the 57 acres that have been acquired during this process. You've got a plan, as you know, that is beginning to develop that, and then there'll be the possibility of going after funding as part of that contract for this part of the project. For the outdoor space, we've got a range of things that can occur there, and that brings us up through page 8, and we really just say, you know, that we've got the water frontage as well as the acreage itself. Indoor, what we're saying is we want people to be able to use it when there's inclement weather, whether if it's seniors or anybody else. We want them to be able to walk around inside, but not just on a path that is a normal pathway. We want it to be something that they have attention. Maybe even we end up with a coffee place on the inside. Whatever the case may be, so that, and maybe linked to some of the housing so that they're protected indoors, but they can walk around. As many of you may be aware, malls for years have been used for this purpose. Many seniors, etc., go out in the mornings and they walk in the malls that are enclosed in order to be able to have a safe, enclosed environment where they can get their exercise and activity. Next slide, please. The additional component that is important is residential and housing. We know that the demand is out there. We talk about that in here. Again, this is just another section where we provided some of the background information from the market analysis to say that we've got demand for housing that is much greater than what we can accommodate on this site, okay, or even on an expansion of the site. We wanted to show them sketches, and that's what we've done throughout this whole thing. They're very sketchy, okay, purposely, but we didn't want to give them an idea of brick versus flat roofs versus curved roofs versus this, that, or the other. We wanted to just show them 3-4 stories, because that's really what we're talking about. It meshes with the zoning ordinance and the development regulations that you have in place in the area, and that residential, that there's very strong demand for it, and the justification briefly in there for that. Next slide. We would now be on page 11, and the rest of this is, those parts are essential, okay? Without the housing, the other pieces aren't going to work as well. We're not going to really have a civic center. We won't have a place that people go. But then we've had other desired components to make this really work to the advantage and to have long-term viability, to make us different than other communities, to make us different than anything else that exists in White Lake, period, right now at this point in time. Next slide, please. And so part of that is commercial. We provide some data in there, but really what we're talking about here is very different commercial from what you have. It is a combination of a market, which again, the changes that will occur in this, so that if you're there in September and you come back 2 months later, it's going to be very different, because what's going to be for sale will be very different, along with pop-up spaces. So it's not going to be fixed like Kohl's that we have in another location or something like that. It's going to be always transitional and always different. That makes people want to come back. So if they come back for service, they're also going to want to do this. And that's part of the charm and what we're developing here that will make us unique compared to anybody else in the area. So it's that combination of those two things. And then we're saying office space, okay? We've come up with a definition of how much office space over the next 10, 20 years that can be supported in the area. And it sounds like a lot, but you've got to remember that one of the things that we like somebody to look at is medical and office space and, educational space in the area. If just those two uses alone would take up practically everything that we're talking about in terms of space. So while it sounds large, it's not really that much space in totality. The next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide. We want one area, whether if we're in the recreation, whether if we're in the area that there is a dominant community services that are available, the government services, or we're in the residential part, there want to be commonalities which are part of a branding process, and particularly art in public places. They can be along the waterfront, they can be anywhere that we choose so that they know that they're one place. Some of you, your proximity to Chicago many years ago started something which you may remember with cows, okay, back in the day, okay, and it took off and it became their brand for a period of time. There's places in Florida, for example, the Ocala area, which is horses. They're known for their horses. Well, they're branded by seeing art in public places all over the place with that kind of thing. Can also be used on indoor themes, whatever that theme is that's worked out with the developer that meets our needs. And I just wanted, again, we showed a couple sketch examples from different things, one of which is in the Muskegon area. That's on your right-hand side of the slide. And so let's go to the next slide. Other things that we think are very important in developing a sense of place and for the future is green technology application, solar, whatever the case may also be. Today, we can have very intensive technology related to communications in the Civic Center area. They're very inexpensive. It doesn't require underground wiring. It doesn't require anything. It's evolutionary in the sense that it's happened very quickly and has come on board and is very inexpensive to install. It may well be that parts of the area were able to keep snow off of the street and off of the sidewalk. It costs more initially, but from the developer perspective and from the community's perspective, it cuts down maintenance in the long run significantly. But again, we want to see green technology incorporated into it. Next slide. Density with human scale. And while irrespective of the success, one of the projects that I think expresses that in what was done is the water that is in Wixom, in their downtown area that they've created in the last few years. They created that area from scratch. So it's new, it's not historic. There was nothing historic about the area. But the fact of the matter is bringing in the water or something like that creates that human scale, make sure that people feel comfortable there. So whatever develops, we want the density in residential. We know that we need that. At the same time, we need the human scale throughout the entire project. Next slide. The last part of this thing is our development process and projected dates. There's one change that I will suggest making in this section 4, which you see doesn't have the dates laid out. We will do that after this meeting or after you approve the RFQ. And that is, I think, because unfortunately it doesn't appear that COVID-19 is going to leave us at any time soon, or that we're all going to be vaccinated in the next 2 months. I think we'll say, okay, we're not going to have an open house because I don't want somebody from Canada or California or wherever, Florida or wherever it's outside of our immediate area to think that they're handicapped somehow because they're not going to come to an open house. So I want to take that out, but we need to set that timeline up and work with the staff in order to do that. One of the things that's important here that you need to understand that also makes us different. We will be doing the solicitation, okay? But it's very different too. We're not going to take in mass email the RFQ to people. every one of the RFQs has to be hand done, okay? Because I've got to take and relate it back to the reason why we qualified them, to projects or other activity that they're currently involved in that says this meets your portfolio. You may not have been looking for us. We saw that you meet this, okay? And we would like you to take a serious look at it. So essentially you're doing 250 individual things, you know, in that cover to this thing. And that's basically the context of the RFQ. And if you want to discuss page by page, however you want to do this from here, let me know, you know, we can take.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Howard. I know there's a lot of information there. And if all of you have kind of read through that, I think it's, you know, it's a new process that all of us are looking at. I have to rely on, you know, Sean for his feedback and Justin and guys to kind of tell us what they think. And so we've been kind of working at things back and forth. I think it gets, for the most part, the gist of what we're trying to do across. Is there always something that you can come up with and change? Absolutely. If any of the board members have any comment, I would like to hear what you have to say now. And we can kind of maybe, if there's other things come up, or you can take a little time, reread it again. And if you have some thoughts or suggestions, Sean would love to hear them. And then we can potentially incorporate them into this and look that over with Howard. So I put that out to the trustees. Mr. Powell.
I know that surprises you.
Absolutely.
So I have a couple questions, and then throw out a couple things just to my colleagues there on the committee. First of all, not to be petty, but on page 1, section 1, third line down, there's a misspelling of the word townships. There should be an apostrophe after in that word townships there. That doesn't mean that I read everything that carefully. I just caught that. And then I wanted to have a comment maybe by Howard there on page, let's see, on page 9, there's a section there that says substantial number of seniors. There in the picture there, and on the right-hand side, the first paragraph in that picture, and the pros and cons, Howard, of identifying the fact, would the proposed developers maybe get the wrong idea that we have an overabundance of seniors there, or are we playing towards that senior end of it, or what, in identifying that there's a substantial number of seniors instead of and the seniors in the township?
I'll change it, Mike. I got no problem with that.
And I don't know if it should be. I'm just asking the question.
I got no problem.
Okay, I just don't want them to think that we're all
Right,
using canes.
right.
But
Well, that's what this is about. We're trying to get some things out there and you know, have a kind of just see where this may lead. This is a draft, obviously, and we need to look at this and say if there's certain areas. You know, I know that we we do have a larger senior group. We are going to have more of them. And there is a draw to that for developers to come in and create some independent housing and things of that nature. Although we are trying to see if we can retain some young people here.
Right.
So that's the thing where we, you know, have to look at potentially, you know, the possibility of lofts and some interesting things and entertainment. So there are some things that we may need to shine the apple a little bit more and try to call to attention. But again, you know, this whole thing, everything we have, including what we're going to see forthcoming, is all draft form to just plant some seeds. So it gives some general ideas of what potentially the township might allow. If we don't have drawings or things, and in this particular case inside the RFQ, some of the 3- and 4-story drawings, there potentially would be developers that would, they'll never allow 2 stories or 3 stories in there, you know.
no, I love it. Yeah.
And so it kind of stretches the envelope a little bit but doesn't necessarily commit us to anything, but it allows someone who's coming from the outside to look and say, oh, maybe they would be open to this. Maybe they have a thought. Maybe we would build a condominium building that had a covered walkway to the township, so, you know, civic center building itself. Just maybe, you know, but the creativity, I think, is going to come a lot from the outside and the economic engine of it. So I think it's very important to have, you know, it's a delicate balance, and I'm not 100% sure how to get there. So Mike, I appreciate your comment.
Just one other thing, and I'll tell it to you in a very short story, in that a number of years ago, maybe
You
10
had
years
short
ago.
stories, Mike.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, I was approached by a Detroit Pistons player who was extremely interested in White Lake Township. He owned property here, and he wanted to, it just happened to be when Mike Kowal was supervisor, but he actually approached the township, and we put together a meeting because he was really intrigued with Alpine Ski Lodge. There are very, very few communities in Southeast Michigan that have that asset. Now, I'm not a fan of advertising for the Stoics, and but it is a draw here in White Lake Township that we have a ski hill and a ski lodge here in White Lake. And this Detroit Pistons player wanted to set up a Four Seasons playground in that facility. So you have skiing in the wintertime, ice skating, that he wanted to put a water park in, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if, I don't have any idea if the Stoics would be willing to discuss that, but certainly as a draw in White Lake Township, I think the developers might like to know that we are one of the very few communities in Southeast Michigan that have a full service ski lodge. And that might be worked into this RFQ somewhere as well.
Mike, I'll put it on page 1, on page 2, section 1 in a backward.
And it was just
no problem with that. And there is one other thing that I wanted to say before anybody else just said. How the qualifications get reviewed is up to you. Okay, I'm not locked in on anything. What I am locked in on is that they know that they're coming to me. I do not, you know, I need to make sure, and they need to make sure that this is clean, quote unquote. Right. Okay. And that's the one problem that we have here. Okay. That we need to provide that certainty. Whether or not you review all of them too, that's your decision. Okay. But from the developer's perspective, I want them to know that it's coming to us.
Totally agree. So thank you, everyone.
I'll comment on it if anyone, unless someone wants.
Go ahead, Andy.
I like the green technology of it, Howard. I like to be green, so that was a plus for me. I love that you included less office space because, as you know, we're all being more flexible these days, because that was one of my concerns. I didn't mind a lot of office space. Love the indoor walking space of it. As a walker myself, I mean, there are days I would love to come home from work and just come down Elizabeth Lake Road and pull in and walk. And then the market area was one of my areas I also liked also, since we're a big rural community, is just have a market for our vendors and our farmers in our area. So nice job, Howard.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted
Yes,
to.
Debbie DeHart, go ahead.
I just like to make sure we include something about the fact that we have, I know that it's talked about external walking trails, but we have such close proximity, not only to the ski hill, but the state and metro parks. I think with everybody being so shut in, the usage in those parks has just exploded. And I think that that's important to let developers know how close we are.
And Debbie, along with that, I'm a major fan of pathways, and I'd love the township to tie this downtown district to those parks and make it a great access.
Well, that goes to the two things that we do have in the works right now. One is the Township Triangle Trail, And then long-term, the conversations I've had with Pontiac Lake Rec, and we'll be getting a little more information on that and trying to tie that up a little bit more as a 4 parks trail, which would ultimately tie Highland Rec to Stanley Park, to Pontiac Lake, to Springfield. So that would be the ultimate ticket. I mean, that's going to take some time in doing, but we would be one of the only communities in Oakland County that would have 4 parks in close proximity and have the ability to transit between them via trail. So, these things are all part of what we'll learn. These are, I also feel that in this process, we're not going to catch everything. It's just going to be impossible. So, but if we put as much the input in there that we can and put these things down and make note of them in there, that whomever we bring in here, we are literally going to have them, they're going to come out here, they're going to spend a day in White Lake. And they're going to get to know about what's going on. They're going to know about a little bit about our complete surroundings. They're going to know about our infrastructure. They're going to know all the different, retail, restaurant. They're going to know what we have. They're going to look us over with a fine-tooth comb if they're going to come out and spend money and make an investment here. They are going to do their own due diligence. Believe me, they're going to be aware that there's a ski lodge there. They're going to be aware that there's a park there. These are things we should call out and make obvious our proximity to all this. But I believe that they're going to see that. And I think, like I say, this is great. Let's keep some of the thought processes going here, what comes up. So anybody else want to make a comment?
On page 8.
Go ahead, Howard.
Just to respond to Debbie, on page 8, in the bottom of page 8 under outdoor recreation, it says the trails and paths would link to those external to the site, but of a more extensive system and the recently completed library. We can perhaps expand that a little bit to add to it if you'd like.
We can embellish that a little bit.
Yes.
So, close proximity to the Bell Trail.
Yeah.
Oh, we have
Michael stretched that out a little bit.
Right.
2 state parks and a metro park in the township. So I think that's
Right.
fantastic.
We're very fortunate. We are park rich. So that's definitely a plus for our community. Okay. Anybody else have anybody you want to make a comment?
Liz had a hand up.
Who? Liz? Okay, Liz, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank
Liz?
you. Okay, so I've made many notes as Howard was talking and going through the slides, so just bear with me a little bit here. I want to talk about, unless I just completely misunderstood you, Howard, one of the first things you said was no civic center in the RFQ. Did you misspeak?
If that's what I said, that's just the opposite. We're talking about the civic center.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. Maybe you just misspoke. I'm like, what? That really doesn't make sense. So maybe that just came out wrong, or I heard you wrong. So I just wanted to make sure if you misspoke for the public, that's exactly what we're talking about is the civic center. Okay, so I love the idea of the marketplace and pop-ups and making it a transitional space. I think that's really unique. I think that has so many possibilities and opportunities to draw residents to White Lake and draw that resident to that area to make it a fun spot. And I love the idea of making a transitional space. I would like to see that a pedestrian area only, kind of like a Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, or somewhere like that, where it's just a walking area. So everybody knows that Trustee Paul and I just love sidewalks and pathways. So I'm very much hoping that we would have a green belt that would be connecting all 3 areas, Stanley Park, the Civic Center, municipal area, and all the way to the library. Yes, we are park rich, but we want to connect all of that area and make that walkable, have trail spots, maybe little exercise spots in between. So I want to make sure that we have a sidewalk going along the front, but also some kind of pathway or trail system that connects all 3 entities.
Liz, let me stop you for 1 minute, please, because I couldn't agree more with you. Okay, I see this almost like pods. Okay, and the pods are linked by pedestrian systems, okay? There has to be roads, you know, because we have to be able to get in and out. But once you go into that pod, you're in that pod, and there's no reason to be in a car. And if you want to go to the next pod, then you can easily get to it without getting back in a vehicle.
Yes,
I don't
that's
want to
very
inject
important.
that. I don't want to inject that at this point in time, because that's my view. Okay, let's see what these that's why we talk to the developers once we see who's interested and who seems to mess.
Right, but this is our chance for trustees to interject what's
Right,
important to us.
right.
So that's important to me, that is connectivity, and that a resident could come here and spend the day and be able to enjoy all three areas and get in their bicycle or walk or push strollers or walk dogs or whatever. So that's really important to me, that is transitional space and that it's walkability. I am not so interested in office space, so I'm glad to see medical office and educational space. I'm glad to see that be reduced. I'd like to see a little bit more reasons to stroll, reasons to congregate and socialize, ice cream, breweries, sitting areas, maybe an outdoor fireplace, a little small area where we can flood an ice skating rink. I'm looking for more activities that are free to our residents. Not everything has to be a storefront or an office space or filled with office buildings and medical buildings. I'm looking for a hub for our community and places where our residents can come and enjoy this area. And maybe it doesn't cost anything to enjoy it. They're just able to have an activity or socialize or gather with friends or family or kiddos. I don't, so I'm looking for like reasons to stroll, like maybe you grab some ice cream, maybe you stop at the brewery, maybe you take a walk. I love the idea of art. We really need that in White Lake. Holland, Michigan is a beautiful example of art in their downtown. I know you mentioned, I think like Muskegon, but Holland's also a wonderful example. Green technology is great. So I just wanted to emphasize the green belt, the connectivity, the uniqueness of the pathways, and a gathering area that doesn't cost anything for residents. So everybody is able to enjoy this area, that it's not necessarily spending money in a boutique or a restaurant, but they're able to come there for a reason, just to socialize. And then lastly, I think we should, I'm sure this is something considered in the green technology, but wireless hotspots, I want to make sure that's included, that we're up to par on technology in this campus. And then the cyclical population is important. The baby boomers are here, and that is a large part of our population. We need to be conscientious that we are attracting all ages, and that we are attracted to new and young families, young professionals. So like offering lofts or different kinds of housing for seniors, young professionals, families just starting out. So all different kind of multi-use housing, I think, is important. And I also want to make sure that, which I think we are, that this is a fine line of growth in White Lake. It is a huge footprint. We need to properly serve our residents with a thoughtful plan in mind, that we are growing, but we're not losing what we all love about White Lake. So we're not looking for, a Birmingham, but we are looking for a community space that is somewhere that White Lakers enjoy and use. And then I just wanted to circle back around to the senior center and the community center. Can you explain that, your thoughts on that just a little bit more? We don't have a community center in White Lake, so I'm hoping we have some place where residents could perhaps rent out for a graduation party or a small wedding, like reunion, something like that, or an indoor sports where they could play basketball, volleyball, something like that. And of course, we need to serve our seniors at the same time. So could you just clarify that part of the community center and the senior center a little bit for me, please?
I think what you said is perfect, Liz. And so I think that's the intent. What happened here was that Nathan, who's going to give a presentation, I think after me, okay, had a contract that called for them to look at a senior center. When we did our homework with the community, when we, interviewed the 600 plus households and stuff like that, we found, no, there's a need for a community center. So that's why I changed it to community senior center, because there is no question that there's huge demand out there for people who want to do a variety of different activities. And that's why I put this data in there so that so that the developers can see there's all kinds of activity that can go in a facility, which means that it can probably break even or maybe make some money for somebody. And some of it can be free as well. I know lots of places. For example, we were involved in a project one time where the entire project was funded through block grant programs because they offered all of the services for free, so that low and moderate income and seniors, by the way, who qualify by definition under the block grant program, it didn't cost them to come to the facility. So what I'm saying to you is that yes, that's why I called it a community center, and that's why I purposely put the data in there.
Yeah, it's kind of a broad effect. We've had a lot of requests for people, that still use the Dublin as a community center. We have a Naval Sea Cadet program in there, with the Boy Scout program in there. We have a number of different things that happen in there as a community center. So we already have one established. It's just not, I'll call it as recognized, but this facility would allow us to embellish that, and being located in its proximity, to the district, the library, all things of that nature, would hopefully be more of a hub in some respect that would take care of the needs of our seniors and take care of the needs of some of our other residents as well.
Take care of the needs of our seniors are very important, and I want to make sure that they have adequate space, especially since our senior population is large and growing. But I don't always find the senior center to be as friendly to community center. So I want to make sure that we have adequate space for both of those needs.
That will be taken into consideration. That's one of the things that we've talked about. Mr. Roman.
Thanks, Rick. I just want to say I thought all of the comments that all of you have made have been extremely insightful. Great stuff. I agree with it all. I just want to add a little observation in regard to demographics. Myself, I live in a subdivision with 28 homes. The average size home in my subdivision is about 2,200 square feet. All the homes have either 3 or 4 bedrooms. But in the last 2 years, we have had 6 senior couples move out and 6 young families move in. Kind of an interesting demographic. So that's all I had, Rick.
Thank you, Mike. Scott, I know you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, please.
Oh yeah, I apologize. I'm coming from my vehicle here, so I can get some peace and quiet from my house. But I liked Howard's comment about he was going to make his proposals to each company specific, and that makes sense. I look forward to the results. I feel like we'll be able to dissect those when they come in. So I have a lot of specific interests, like each one of you, and I think that every company he engages in is going to address those in a different way. So when we get those back, I think we'll have a little bit more to chew on, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and I think he's got a pretty detailed presentation put together here. So I'm looking forward to the results.
Thank you. Any of the other board members at this time? Any of the Civic Center Development Committee members would like to say something? Okay, Sean, Mr. Powell.
Just a quick observation that maybe you guys didn't catch. If you're a snow skier, however, excuse me, you'll recognize this. And Howard just glossed over it, but it is it's really a neat idea, and it goes with the green section. When you're out skiing or you're doing something in the snow, there's something attractive about a sidewalk and a roadway that melts the snow automatically, the heated sidewalks things. When you're out and about, it just almost draws you to want to go on walking on that sidewalk. So in a Four Seasons playground, if we have sidewalks that are calling to you, even during the snowstorm, that's a really neat idea, Howard, and I wanted to thank you for that.
Some of the technologies that are out there now, we have low voltage in just floor systems. It's not like it had to be back in the day when they had the steam pipes running through the concrete. The technology has evolved. So there's a lot of different things that are out there, and it could very well be something that could be tied in, either whether it's, individual shops have it or if it's done in the common areas. I mean, there's just a lot of things to look at in the overall perspective of it. I'm sure Mike Lufkin will have some ideas on that, and he'll also tell us how expensive it is. But it's something to talk about and something to look at potentially as part of this program. Liz, you had your hand up again?
Just one last quick question, and I think Howard mentioned it. I would like to include, if it's not, but I think you did. I took notes and I have this in front of me. I'd like to include an amphitheater that's in there, right? A possible amphitheater.
That's something that probably we're going to look at when we do the master plan of the park. It'd be probably one of the ideal locations for that type of thing, Liz. And you're right. That's something that I would love to see us have. That'd be something that I've talked about. And I have a spot down there that just.
There's a natural spot for it. That's like perfect. That it really could be done very easily. There's a natural spot in between the library and our township property, and then perhaps a secondary location on Stanley Park. So I didn't know if we wanted to just include that in this, or if we want to think about that in Stanley Park.
The park would be the better spot.
Yeah, park would probably be the better spot, although I gotta agree with Liz, there is an ideal spot there. But I think what I would do is I would say these are, again, the ideas that we put out there.
Right.
That if someone comes along and they incorporate something like that into their design, that's where we can work on a little bit more. So, but I think a lot of the things that we're looking for are going to be through the Parks Committee, and they'll have their opportunity to look at that and really kind of make recommendations to work with Beckett and Rader and really try to bring some of these other things that we're looking at into our community to really make this place pop. But that's going to be, I want to get the two totally intertwined. They are intertwined, but right now.
Well, is it worth putting, and Scott, I didn't hear you, so I'm not sure where your input was on it. What did you say?
Oh, I said, I think I've been to your amphitheater before.
Yeah, there's a good spot.
Let me say, Liz,
I think it's worth putting in there just to see, the possibility, and if it's not ideal here, then we always have the option of Stanley Park. I mean, it kind of doesn't hurt to take a broad sweep and see what we get back.
Liz, again, in here it says look at use the topography, don't annihilate it.
Right.
Okay, so that if the developer looks and sees what you're seeing, they may reach the same conclusion that you did easily. But that's the next phase when we move into an request for proposals from the specific developers.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. Any of my other board members or anyone? I'm looking here, kind of fanning along. Okay, Mr. O'Neill, I'm going to kind of turn this back to you, and you can take it in the direction that you like, sir.
Well, I know we've received some comments from everyone, and Howard, I know, has been taking notes, and we have as well. I think these are pretty minor changes that can be made, and I think the next step would be moving ahead with the issuance of the RFQ. And I think that's a request tonight. I'd like to move this to the next step if we could. Howard, what was your projected date for the issuance of this? I know it's going to be time. It's going to be a little laborious for you because you've got to tailor some of these things, but when do you intend on beginning that process?
If I'd like to start the beginning of October, which is just in a couple of days. But if I wait 2 weeks, that's okay too. But I want to begin that process soon, but it's going to take a few weeks to get them all out because they're individualized. The other thing, yeah, go on.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
There, the other thing, and I've said this to you when you hired us, my goal is to have this be as fiscally responsible as is possible for the jurisdiction, to have as less money come out of your pocket. At some point, there may be required bonding. My advice is go get all the bonding that you can and need for the project, even if we don't use it. That you make sure that you have the capacity in place to do what you need from an implementation standpoint, even if we don't end up using all of it.
Right.
Well,
And there in itself is a whole nother story because it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So, you have to get to a certain point. And I understand that, but that's also where potentially the public-private comes in, where the lease purchase, lots of different options that are available to us. So by at least getting this part of it off the ground, I think we will attract enough interest and kind of see where it goes. It should be interesting. So, John?
So Howard, if you are to begin this process, either the end of this week or beginning of next week, if that's, if the board is okay with that tonight, and you've mentioned it's going to take you 2 or 3 weeks to get all of these out.
At least.
When would your due date be? I'm looking at your projected dates and you're really,
Yeah,
we're using years, not months, but at this point, the RFQ responses are due back before the end of this year. And though evaluation of qualification says 2021, I mean, if you're saying we want them back by December 30th, then we would certainly not begin evaluating them until 2021. But how many weeks do you intend these?
I'd like to have the responses back in, let's say by mid-December. Okay, and then we begin our review mid-December, narrow it down by, let's say second week in January, something like that, so that we're not pressing anybody too much over the holidays, because not a whole lot, in my opinion, ever occurs during the holiday season, although we've never been one quite like this before.
So we're saying mid-October, they should all be out roughly 60 days, which seems like a reasonable time period. I mean, I've always heard from consultants that, if the time window is too narrow, then they just say, forget it. I'm not even going to entertain it because I don't have time to dedicate to this. So I'd certainly be an advocate. I mean, this is a huge undertaking, one of the biggest things this township has ever done in this regard. And so I think we're all eager to move ahead in this process, but giving a couple more weeks to it, I think certainly will pay dividends. And for those of you who I see your heads nodding, who have this experience, if anyone feels differently, please let me know. But what you're saying seems reasonable to me, Howard. And, if that is the case, then it would also make sense that if we're looking at a mid-December response due date, then it would indeed be early January before we start dissecting those responses. And I know you had mentioned process-wise that they would all be funneled back to you. And Howard and I had talked about a week ago about that process, that he would evaluate them and then send them over to the township. So you all could look at exactly what he's looking at and do your own independent evaluations. And then we could kind of do an amalgamation of thoughts and ratings of the RFQs that we get back and kind of see, who we want to interview in the next step.
I think that's appropriate. What I would like to see tonight, I would like to see us approve to go forward with the RFQ with the amended suggestions approved by the township planner. I think there's a lot of little things that we're going to incorporate there. And I know time is important to you, Sean. I know you want to try to keep this rolling along. So that would be my thought process. And, if we could do that. So Mr. Powell, I'm looking at you and you're smiling there.
Well, let's hear from Liz first. She has a hand up.
Go ahead, Liz.
I just want to encourage the committee at all, if they have anything to say. I promise we don't bite. Last time, nobody said anything. And thank you, Debbie, for speaking up a little bit this evening, but you've all been working on this for several months. And the point of this joint meeting is to hear from you and share ideas. So does anybody have anything that they'd like to share with the board? Because we really would appreciate hearing from you. And I want to thank you for your efforts and time.
JP, go ahead. Put your microphone back on, sir.
All right. So I know this is really, it's not something you can put in there, but I just want to stress again, especially over the quarantine, what I've really noticed is having my two boys they've really gotten into fishing and access into the park, access down from the back. I made a kind of a smart aleck comment in one of the meetings, you know, putting aside something where I'm sure there's somewhere we could do this where people could, even if you just had like a bait machine or something where that would draw more people in too. People are looking for places to fish. Again, it would probably come in more with the park, but something off that civic center, especially with some of the designs we kicked around with possibly entrance in the lower half, and then you're moving, you're taking topography into it. And so take advantage of that.
Yeah, very important. A small walkout pier. You know, there's a whole another side to this. When originally we purchased the township property, I was able to secure a 60-foot wide easement through an adjacent parcel of property just for that purpose. And that was prior to purchasing the park property. So we still had that easement in place. So we have even more access to the water down there than what we currently have. So it's definitely something that was on my mind when we put the purchase agreement together for the original township property. Thank you.
All right.
Any other members? All right. Kashawn, back to you.
I see Debbie has her hand up, actually.
Sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
The only other thing I can say is to Liz regarding the senior community center. In Louisville, Colorado, where my daughter lives, they just did an.
Oh, I'm familiar with there. I've been there.
Great town. They just did a major expansion to their senior community center, which is under one roof. And what I have noticed the many times I've been there using the pool with the grandkids is that the seniors have a lot of classes, but there's a lot of little daycare classes and classes for children. And there's a big community area in the center where they all kind of get together. And then the seniors are doing swim classes here and the kids are doing swim classes here. And not that we would have a pool or anything like that, but it brings the community together.
And intergenerational togetherness is awesome experience too. So I like that idea. There are some, actually, speaking of Denver, there are some really neat things going on out there. They have a place called like the Orchards, and it's an outdoor sitting area, and it's an outdoor fireplace, and it's small, and it's a little spot where families can hang out, and there's a little bits of spray park that the kids can run through. Not a large spray park like Indian Springs, but just a quick little blip of fun to run through as moms sit and socialize, or dads. And then there is a neat park also in Denver that if our committee could look up, and it's called the Premium Outlets, and they put in a really interesting park kind of through shopping centers and breweries, and there's just, I like that concept. So they have some neat ideas going out in Colorado. Maybe we can take a field trip.
Mike Powell's been out there. He knows his way around.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We do. We travel to similar areas, and I think he knows what I'm talking about. And they do have some very interesting, unique ideas that we could kind of incorporate.
Yep. Maybe it will do that. That just might be the case. Okay.
So before I make a motion,
thank you. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, before I make a motion, I just wondered if Howard or my fellow board members and committee members, I'm not necessarily interested in reviewing all the RFQs. Now, if we only get 3, then I'd want to see them all. But if we get 20, I'd rather have Howard go through them, and maybe I'd want to review the first 4 or 5 or something. But I'm not that interested in spending days going through RFQs. And so I didn't know if the other board members, do you want to see all of them, or just key ones that Howard picks out?
I think the ones he picks out.
I think the ones he would make recommendations. He's well-known in his industry, and he'll know who to recommend us to dance with and make that suggestion. That's one of the reasons that we brought him in to begin with. There may be a certain number of them. There's no reason you can't share the names with us. And if we get a name that looks familiar and we know that guy, and
Yeah.
it might strike an accord with us. I think the board has the absolute right to know everyone that's submitted. There's no question about it. But I would say, Howard, we would like to see your recommendation as to do the service as we have brought you on to do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So
Liz?
for me personally, I agree. I'd like to see Howard's recommendations, but I would like all of them to be made available to the board if a board member chooses to review that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I had just said. So I think the board has every right to know, who's submitted. So there's no question about that. Okay, Mr. Powell, moving along. Mr. Powell, back to you.
If you
Looking for that
don't
motion.
mind then, Mr. Supervisor, I move to
Are you there, Michael?
the RF.
You're frozen, your face. I'm sorry. So I missed a little bit, but just
Oh,
wanted-
have I frozen, have I?
No, Supervisor Kowal, but now I think he's unfrozen.
All right. Then I move to approve the RFQ as amended tonight and request that Chesapeake Group submit or
Go ahead, Mike.
solicit the RFQs, solicit the RFQs as he presented tonight.
With this amended suggestions approved by the township planner.
That is correct.
Okay. I have motion looking for support.
Andrea will support that.
I have support by Andrea Voorhees. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Lilly?
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. And I appreciate all the members. Tonight, we're going to do a review of some of the material that's gone through us and before us before, but it's kind of a little bit of a rehash, and there are some new things out there. So at this moment, I will turn it back over to Sean, and we'll do a review of the master plan, some of the graphics from DLZ.
Okay, some of you who are on the committee have seen this. It was back a while ago. I think we met in the annex. If I'm not mistaken. So some of you have seen this, some of you may have not. I know that Liz and Mike Powell and I met with Nathan about a week and a half ago, and he did the kind of fly through demonstration and shared some of the graphics that you will all see tonight. And there were a couple tweaks he was still going to make. So I think we saw probably 95% of a finished product. So tonight, Nathan's going to go through, as Rick mentioned, kind of the graphics of the master plan showing an arrangement of land uses in approximate locations down, I should say, in the Civic Center area. So I'll kick it over to Nathan, and really the purpose of this is for him to, and he'll share his screen, but him to kind of discuss this with you and get any feedback you might have. This isn't, a final product, but tonight I think the hope is that we'll get any comments that will be necessary in order to help him finalize that so we can move on through this phase. So Nathan, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that introduction. So I'm really excited about the conversation that's already been happening, because I think we're presenting some things today that address a lot of the things that have been already talked about. I've been taking my notes here, so I apologize if I steal anybody's catchphrase and you don't get credited for it. But I'd like to kind of acknowledge, those individual things. So as of the last joint meeting, DLZ is working at kind of multiple scales within this project. Originally, we were brought in to focus on the town hall and the space planning for that. And then we've now been moving more into the master plan. So because we're working at multiple scales, and there's more detail as you move more towards those civic buildings, I've kind of phased our presentation into two components, basically, if you will. The first is for the larger scale master planning. I think we have a tool that really answers a lot of the question you guys have and really kind of puts a visual to many of the things that Howard has established in the RFQ and some of the ideas in a way that will help the developers get an idea for what you're looking for, but without providing too much bias. And then the second component of that is we'll start moving into a little more detail in some specific images that'll give more of a street feel, and then addressing kind of more of the specific site components for the life and safety building and the town hall, which will have a little more specifics to them. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And hopefully you can see that. So this is a tool that we have, and the one great thing about computers now is we're not limited to two-dimensional drawings anymore. And somebody very astutely just last week pointed out that this is sort of the answer to the old chipboard or cardboard model, where you could pick things up and move them around and see what the space looks like. And so we've developed this for the master plan to showcase and kind of put some volumes to some of the numbers and capacities that Howard had talked about. These are not meant to be specific building proposals. It's really just to kind of get an idea of what this will start to look like on the site. So this 3D view that you're looking at here is looking down Orchard Lake. This is your new library building.
Elizabeth Lake.
Elizabeth Lake, thank you. And then so taking a look at the areas that are yellow would be sort of a residential volume. The areas that are red would be commercial. Again, that's undefined. As Howard was saying, that could be market space or pop-up spaces, which would be great to have towards the road, just to start looking at what that volume of space would look like on the site. The green would be the proposal for a new community center or recreational facility. And then the blue buildings, the darker blue buildings, are those civic buildings that we're talking about that are a little more set in stone that we know we need, as far as the life safety building and the town hall building as well. And as well, having a little bit of office space to kind of help activate this area. So I'm going to do a quick kind of fly through and do a quick hits of some of the areas we talked about. And then I'll open it up for some questions so we can fly around and answer those before we get into kind of the more set in stone graphics and drawings. So real quickly, one thing that this lets us do is talk through a couple of different design options as to how those things can be laid out on the space. Again, none of this is set in stone, but each of these options was designed around having some of the conversations you've talked about. I don't know that any one of these layouts addresses everybody's desires or concerns, but it's certainly within one of these, you'll be able to see many of your comments. So quickly, we're able to fly through and go down and take a street level view to start giving you an idea of what this space feels like as you get lower to ground level. That's one of the really nice things that we like about this software, is this way we can start having the conversation of what it looks like when you're on the street. So I know one of the things Howard talked about was, the amount of residential that's in the area, and that's one of the big considerations. Do you have a larger commercial build or a larger residential building towards the back, and then some kind of mixed use areas around the street? Howard, as we've gone through this, we've kind of moved more towards the 2 to 3 story development, and taking kind of that same volume of residential that we started with and getting an idea for what that looks like when you're on the street. So, I know this building looks imposing, but then as we, take all of that residential and push it onto a street level view, you start to see how that makes the street feel a little more boxed in. So that's something that, should be considered. And obviously this will be all finalized with the developers. But just to give you an idea of what it would look like if you had a roundabout at Elizabeth Lake, what the impact of possibly having a larger building on the site would look like. So again, focusing a lot of the commercial towards the street level, making it walkable, making it, spaces for pop-ups, markets, those types of things, while still providing some areas for larger office buildings so that you have people who are commuting into the space and getting out at lunch and using those pop-up spaces, helping to kind of feed the commerce. I know that's something that Howard has identified as well. So I know one of the other topics that was talked about was, the senior center versus community center and how that plays out in the space. So, if you had a larger, what would be more of a traditional community center that has, maybe recreational facilities, a gym, that type of thing, you would have a larger volume, and that could be connected by a path along the back side of the site. I'm assuming most people are familiar with the site, but if you're not, there's a fantastic grade change towards the back of the park as you go into the park, I should say. And those of you who have grown up around here, Michigan is notoriously flat. So, just trying to find a sledding hill around here is a bit of a challenge. So I think that's an area of interest that can be utilized in a couple ways. Another way that could play out is that there could be additional office space. And as we originally had started this process and we were focused in on the town hall, some of those services in the senior center and things were thought of as being a part of the town hall. So then as we get towards the southern end of the site, this would be where those civic buildings would be focused, the town hall and the new life safety building. As you get into that area, as well as access to the park. So the intent would be for this driveway to continue on into the park. For now, we've just shown the drive because I know another consultant is working on the park, and as they kind of finalize that design, we'll be able to show it continuing in. But we wanted to be able to communicate that idea that there would be the ability to connect these these wonderful civic amenities that you have, and just the ability to kind of get down in the space and these parking areas that have been laid out are not by any means set in stone. But we wanted to give some idea about the volume of parking that would be needed. So really, they're just kind of placeholders, and the developer that you work with will come in, and maybe some of this is handled with a parking deck or additional street parking. Again, the final design, this is not meant to be a final design in any way, shape, or form. It's simply meant to give you the ability to have a conversation in a more educated, or a more efficient way, I guess, about the space, instead of, going, oh, I wonder what this would feel like, or I wonder what this would look like, and how the connection to the park and those types of things would feel. I'm going to fly through here real quickly, and then I'm just going to do a quick setup. I have a couple fly-throughs, and then if any of the board members have specific things they'd like me to take a look at or comments, again, we're going to get into kind of some more detail on the street levels, and then also this area with the civic components in a couple minutes. So the one last thing I'd like to highlight is this area at the back where we're talking about the grade change. I think that's a really nice transition between the park and the civic space. And like I said, a tool like this really gives you the idea or the ability to start kind of having that. So I'm going to flip on just a quick fly through. And again, if you want me to go to something specific, I can stop it while that's going. I can't, since I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see if any of the board members have their hands up or are asking questions. Sean, would you take a look here and just let me know if
We'll
anybody
let you
has
know.
any questions?
Yeah.
I think the demonstration of the tool is unique, and it allows people to see something that could be, although it's not cast in stone. So that's what the upside is of this.
Yeah, and that's really something that was a focus for us in providing something that, like I said, helps facilitate the conversation, but without biasing a developer coming in and into the thought that they think, oh, I've got to have pitched roof and this type of shingle, and it's got to be brick versus siding. This gives you the ability to have a general conversation without kind of obstructing the creativity.
You're missing a foundation on that building there.
Yeah.
It's a new technology.
It's a
Yeah.
floating foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, if nobody has any additional questions about this, I will switch over and.
I had a question.
Sorry, Mike Roman's hands up. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Just a comment. Everyone has expressed, the desire for walkability. And I'm curious if I don't really see sidewalks in there. But just curious, Nathan, would it make sense to maybe color code the walking paths and sidewalks in a different shade other than that gray? Maybe you could make all your sidewalks and walking paths white.
Yeah, we could highlight that to kind of highlight the idea of walkability. I mean, again, part of this was we didn't want to put too many resources into this, as several of the board members have expressed the desire for us to stay focused where we're being most efficient. I think that would be a great way to kind of highlight that idea, because we've been very selective about the detail, obviously, that goes in, because we want to, to your point, convey the ideas of walkability and those types of things, again, without developers getting into the idea or somebody feeling that they're pigeonholed into a specific type of design.
Absolutely.
Liz has
I don't know if you can see me. Just for the other board members and residents that may be watching us now or later, I believe at one time, please correct me, off the township municipal building in blue right here in the center, it would kind of be like an angle off the back corner, that boardwalk area to Brendel Lake. Is that correct still in this layout?
No, there's no.
Originally, when we spoke where the town hall would be, it was kind of like off the back area to the angle, angled. Is it? So where is it in this plan? Just.
It is closer to the south, Liz. It's, in other words, it'd be closer to it's closer to Stanley Park.
Right.
And the specifics on it are not 100% set yet, but it'll be in that general proximity. We're still, subject to obviously potentially somebody coming in and potentially having another idea or a thought. When we, Sean and
I'm not looking for specifics, just for residents and just to give people ideas so they don't get too down a wild path of that we're gonna, because I know there's residents concerned that this is a private lake. So we are just having a boardwalk area that you can walk down and maybe have a fishing pier or a bench or a kayak or something like that.
Again, that'll be part of more of the master plan of the park. But
so the gray area to the top left of my screen is the library, correct? And then the blue is
correct.
South. And perhaps that boardwalk area would go on an angle this way. Can you see me?
All right, can you see my arrow? Is this where you're thinking of? Like this area where my mouse is currently?
Nope. So the blue buildings are municipal building, correct?
Yes, so this would be the town hall.
It would
This would be
kind
the
of
new life
be
safety.
off of the south back corner direction.
So this area. So we just showed for the purposes of this exercise, we just kind of showed a path, like I said, leading back into the park. And I know that'll be, as the other consultant gets more into the park design, we can certainly show, a little more connection.
We have a separate park design, but we do have access on our township property to it. It's I'm calling it a boardwalk area.
Yep.
So that's a basic area, general area where it would still be correct, Rick? kind of
Yes,
off that,
in that general
that
area.
corner. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Mike, I see you.
Yeah, I think I remember Howard, the last meeting or maybe the meeting before mentioned that he was looking for somewhat of a sketch for this. So I'd just like Howard to comment if he's still on the call, to see if this is kind of what he had in mind and if he has any recommendations.
Nathan and I spoke about after that meeting about a bubble drawing where it would show the land that was developable on the property. Nathan, I don't know what's going on with that.
Yes. So, and we'll get into a little bit of that later on as we move and we talk about the Civic Center site. So based on some conversations that we've been having over the last 2 weeks, we've been kind of finalizing the amount of space that would be required for those civic buildings. And Mike from our office is gonna speak to that in a little bit. And now that we have that component, we'll be able to kind of finalize that. But we wanted to know basically what the volumes we were looking at for the Civic Center buildings were prior to developing that.
Thank you, Nathan.
So,
Oh, Liz,
and I muted myself.
there you go.
So Supervisor Cole, when would you like to have that conversation? Because we still haven't decided that as a board of what we would like to retain for township property and purposes. I know we talked a lot about it and Mr. Lilly brought it up several times to make sure that, you know, we don't give away too much land in case we need to grow or expand in the future. This is our one shot of what we're going to be able to have for municipal offices. So when would you like to discuss that, or when would be an appropriate time in the process for us to decide we want 5 acres, we want 10 acres surrounding us?
Well, that's what Nathan is going to reveal to us here shortly as to what these particular buildings, and there still may be some massaging that could be done. And again, there is always the opportunity for things to change a little bit, depending if a idea comes in that might be a better mousetrap than what we're looking at. So we need to be open-minded to this. And
course, but we haven't
that's what this process is.
needs an assessment from BLT yet, so we don't have much to go on. We all gave our input, and staff and board members and employees gave our input of what we
I think you need to let Nathan go forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll piggyback off of Rick. So as we get into more detail, what you're asking about is some of the things that we're about to present. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay,
So once we get into it, if you still have questions, I think we'll be more than happy to field them. But I think it might just be we'll just jump into the presentation, and like I said, it might answer, I think, some of the questions you're asking right now.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Real quickly, any more questions that would involve the fly-through model before I flip over here?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, thank you. I can only see like 3 of you at a time, so it takes a while to scroll. Okay, so real quickly, I'm gonna go through these couple slides pretty fast because we've already kind of talked to it. Obviously, I just went through the fly-through presentation. And again, things to kind of quick hit here. You know, it's a tool that takes a high level of perspective, and it kind of replaces, like I said, those physical models or the old-fashioned bird's eye view that kind of limits your ability to look around the space. So again, I think this is a tool that will be really, you know, in talking to Rick and Sean, I think will be really helpful moving forward. You know, it is designed so that it's not meant to be set in stone. We can show multiple options. And it'll help have the design conversations with the developer, because ultimately that's why you're bringing the developer in is they're going to be kind of instrumental in finalizing a lot of this. This is a nice package that we at TLC have been able to develop, that we can export this over to Sean or Rick or maybe one of their interns who is a little more computer savvy so that they can fly around. I know Sean is a little reticent to try and be navigating this. But it's definitely, it's not something that you need us for, and you don't need a custom software package that costs you a bunch of money. So that's one of the reasons we like this, is it's something that we can turn over. And then, as I already stated, you can showcase multiple design options. The next component to this, and we didn't spend a lot of time on renderings, but we did do a couple of street level views because I think it's something that communicates an idea and a feeling to certain people who struggle with being able to see it in that fly through. You know, it's hard to get an idea of what the street scale is. There are a couple kind of critical things that we did when we went through and did these. Again, I know that the board has expressed that they didn't want us to spend too much time in this area, so we just kind of did some quick hits again to fill in the gaps and touch on some of the ideas that have already been mentioned by the board. So, you know, these are really just to give a sense of the space. They're very intentionally generic. So I will say this, you know, Howard would probably describe these as everywhere America. And we did that very specifically so that what we're showing is human scale, but not trying to again, provide any bias towards developers or anybody that would think of it as a set design direction. You know, again, this is just another tool to help facilitate the conversation with the developers. And again, it's really meant to only talk about high level ideas. So the idea of placemaking, you know, the use of public art to do that, what could that be? We're not proposing a piece of public art. You know, public wayfinding, how that relates to paths and those types of things. And to give a little bit of a sense of scale, which I'm sure you noticed in the fly through, sometimes it's hard to see exactly, you know, if a person's walking when it's just a massive color, what that looks like. So real quickly, I'm just going to kind of go through these. I think they're very self-explanatory. So this would be a look at the proposed roundabout or that idea, and just kind of communicating the idea that, yes, you'd like some, you know, the new critical development in 2020 is the outdoor bar or restaurant seating, which has become ultimately just imperative, and what it would look like, you know, that we want it to be walkable, and to give a sense of scale for some of these ideas. Again, this would be looking down towards if that condo building was to be developed, you know, looking at the idea of using public art or activating those spaces between the buildings to make it easier to navigate through the space. Again, I'm by no means would I ever think anybody would put a wedding ring with a twist tie in the middle of their downtown. It's just, again, it's just meant to kind of give the developers an idea of, hey, we're looking at public art and how it could be used. So that's really what most of these communicate. This would be looking again the other way across the roundabout, and just that idea that, you know, if you're a developer, or let's say you get somebody specific coming in for the office building and they have a very specific idea of what they want, you know, that this red building can then be whatever. It's just to kind of communicate the idea of this is a location that you could use, and to demonstrate the flexibility. And then lastly, real quickly here, would just be a more rendered out version of that town hall massing, which you had seen prior, and just again to give kind of a personal scale and to show that I know sometimes in that fly through, it looks like we're proposing this, you know, monumental palace. But I think this is something that, you know, in the conversations about the town hall that you know, we've had with Rick and Sean and other members, it's really well proportioned, and we just kind of wanted to show that scale. The other component of this that kind of talks to this little bit smaller scale, and this slides kind of directly into the site plan for the town hall and life and safety, which I'm going to turn over and let Mike from our office talk about a little bit. I know I'm kind of combining these two things, but I think it ties in some of the ideas, and then we can come back and handle the questions together. So Mike, do you want to jump in here real quick?
Yeah, sounds good, Nathan. Thanks, everybody. Mike Lufkin with DLZ. Do you have that plan, Nathan, or do you want me to share my screen?
You know what? I'm going to stop sharing because I know you have a little more detail in
Yep.
it.
All right, let me bring up. All right, everybody see that? I got a conceptual site layout that shows the public safety building, civic center, and I'll kind of go through that a little bit for you here. I'll zoom in a little bit with the fly-throughs and everything. I think everybody has a concept of where these facilities sit on the site. So I'll just go through it a little bit and try to answer some of the questions specifically about space and how much space these occupy with the required amenities. So south end of the site, you've got your public safety building. South of that, on what is the park property, we've got an access drive down to the park and kind of a generic entry into the park property. We don't know because, like we talked about, we have to work with the consultants on the park to see how that's going to develop. But we generically showed, kind of an access into the park there with an upper level parking closer to Elizabeth Lake Road for people that'll park up there and then walk down into the lower level of the park. Generally, we've got an access drive just north of the public safety building that shown access and turning radiuses for the fire trucks as they come into the bay of the fire station. And I can zoom in a little bit here and show you, because of the grade change on the site, we're able to use that for the lower level and access to the lower level of the public safety building. There's a retaining wall that kind of helps facilitate a grade break. So the fire station would operate on the upper level of the building, and then this secured parking lot behind the police and fire building would allow access to the lower level of the building for the police. As you come into the site a little further to the west, and we've got the proposed civic center building kind of generically shown here. We tried to respect and placement of the building, the green line here being the wetland line. So we tried to respect a reasonable offset from that wetland line to place that building. And what we wanted to do on the lower level here is provide some access to the lower level of the building, which is at least planned currently for the senior center. So certainly want to have some nice handicap accessible access to the lower level of the building to facilitate seniors entering at that level. And then generically just show across the street from the Civic Center approximately what you'd need to park the remainder of the building. 150 spaces is probably what it's going to take for this size of a facility. That's taken into account. You're going to have some shared parking spaces because you're not going to have that facility 100% in use at all times, where you'll have, a lot of your board meetings will be at night, which is not going to be the same time where most of the staff is working at the facility. So just to give you some ideas on space, we've got approximately 14 acres of developable land using the wetland boundary and Elizabeth Lake Road as the defining features. The public safety building occupies almost 3 acres, the way it's shown here. And the civic center with the associated parking takes up about 2 to 2.2 is what we've got identified here. Just to give you an idea what these two facilities need. That's not to say that that's all that anybody wants on this property, but that is probably a good idea to give you what space is required for these two facilities anyways.
And Mike, real quick.
Yes, sir.
Is water sewer, is that going to be housed in the Civic Center building?
Nathan could probably talk a little bit about that on the programming of the building. Do you have that information, Nathan?
Yeah, I have that. So the public works, their office spaces, we, you know, in the new town hall, they would be brought in and be a part of that space as well. However, like, we're still going to have to provide you know, supplemental space in terms of, you know, as Rick likes to say, for them to go bang on things. You know, I don't think you want that happening in the office next door. So in some respects, those facilities would be proposed to be slightly separated, again, with the office space being a part of the town hall, so that they can coordinate with the other departments.
So you're talking about another building now?
No, we wouldn't be talking about building another building. We would be talking about utilizing the existing space that the township already has. I'll let Rick speak more.
Yeah,
to
I think we need to, right now, Mike, until we have some of the logistics of this down, we haven't gone into the full dynamics of how each department is going to intermesh yet. We haven't hashed that out yet completely, but we're trying to use the program space and how that space will be defined internally. All the department heads that operate that will have their opportunity to sit down with Nathan and go through that as we go further into this. This is just to try to carve out the land right now and how we're going to use it, and then determine what the next steps are. So this is why we need to do this, and then possibly take a portion of the land to the west of, I'll call it the north, I'll call it the north, I guess there's a kind of odd direction, where that other proposed possible building could be. And that may be a parcel of land that we put on reserve for a future township site, for whatever it may be, whether we think we're going to have a athletic facility, you know, with basketball courts or this or the other thing. But again, this gets us to where we have our functional public safety building for the future, functional township hall for the future. And we could always have an opportunity as we go through this process and we work with whomever may be interested in getting involved with us, that we can reserve at any time, we can reserve some further property towards heading up Elizabeth Lake, so to speak, so towards Elizabeth Lake Road. I mean, excuse me, towards M59 for future township purposes. So whether that's an acre or 2 acres, we're not going to put a DPS building, DPW building down there. It's going to have backhoes and trucks and things of that nature. If we grow to that point at some point in the future, we would have to maybe look at that at an alternate location. And we do have alternate locations of what the township already owns the property. So, but I'm not going to get into all of those nuts and bolts. This is the day-to-day operations of the township and its functionality and interaction with the public. And that's where the rest of it comes in, that we wouldn't see any need to go up along Elizabeth Lake Road. It doesn't make any sense. You know, the township hall is really a destination. It's not a drive-by place that, oh, I think I'll just stop in the township hall. You're coming into the township hall with a purpose in mind. And if you use that purpose, and again, if we have a combination senior community center in the lower level of the building, and that's a starting point for us. And if we grow in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and we keep a little space to the north, or we may have another opportunity somewhere in the township to potentially create another facility.
Yeah, no, Rick, thanks for that explanation. You know what, it's real easy to try to jump ahead and ask questions, and I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing a building.
Yeah, no, we're not. You wouldn't want to have dump trucks with a backhoe and stuff rolling around downtown. It wouldn't be the right place for it. Yeah.
Mike Leflin.
Yes.
I have a question. Just so I understand you correctly, you said we have 14 acres of developmental land. So the public safety building requires approximately 3 acres. A township building, municipal offices would be 2.5 acres. So that leaves us 8 acres, correct? Because you have 14 acres to develop, right? So leaves us 8 acres to work with. And then I'm still, and I guess I'm just so ever gently pushing for this. We did a needs and assessment study over a year ago for the township hall, and we still have no results on that. And then DLZ asked us for more money last month. So without, it's been a year. I think we deserve to have some information now before we continue to move forward. And that's why some of us.
Yeah, they're two different things. Spatial planning on the building is different than
that to go forward. So I still would like to know if you have an approximate idea of a square footage of the town hall.
Nathan, your comment?
Yeah, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I will say this. Liz, I saw your question coming here. Mike, you wanna switch off your screen share real quick? So for those of you, and I believe what Liz is talking about, when we started this process initially, we had put out some surveys. We got feedback from several people, or from many of the staff members and the trustees who use the building, use the space, the current town hall, and all of that's kind of been factored into some conceptual plans and programming. This is by no means a full presentation of what we have. That's being put together in a full report, but I
understand. I'm just looking for an approximate of what do you think? I think by a year we are owed that answer of approximate.
Yep, 1 second. I'm gonna share something with you real quickly. Let me see if this comes up. So, let's see if this works. Of course it's not working. All right, 1 moment. Bear with me. Trying to get this shared. I did throw together, so this has gotten into, there we go. So this is a quick look at kind of what we've been developing, just to show, that we are making some progress in developing with the departments. So this was going with the original plan of having the senior center, which would be located in the lower level with some common amenities in terms of having gathering spaces that could be rented out or used by the public. A lot of that would inhabit the lower level. The first floor would then be the main public access to each of the departments, and leveraging that. So in a way, creating one pathway that the public would use to kind of navigate the space. And then each of these departments have been laid out based on, all those surveys we did and the recommended adjacencies. And then the supervisor's office and assessor's office would move upstairs. Again, just based on not wanting to spread out the square footage too much. It would be ideal to have everybody on one floor, but again, to the numbers Mike gave you, you're eating into more of your developmental land. And then having some common shared facilities in terms of conference spaces and those things, which all departments had requested. So this is just to give you kind of a high level idea of what we've been looking at. And then,
so what is the approximate square footage of this?
Oh, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
It's right around 38,000 square feet.
Yep.
Okay.
That's where we are. Thank you. I didn't have that number right in front of me. So again, just some very developmental things that we had talked about, leveraging those views to the south and kind of the ability for the town hall to connect the site between the parkland and the civic center. So I know it's not the full request or the full report, but I just wanted to kind of show you that we do this is in development, and then this is what we'll be kind of taking to the department discussions to finalize and get finalized into a more concrete.
And I
plan.
fully understand that, and thank you for answering my question. But our board needs to have some information in order to make educated decisions moving forward, and our residents are counting on us to be educated to make these informed decisions. So, I do have some experience in this when the library was built in square footage and parking and green belt around, and all that's very important. So I know we're still working in approximities, but so it is important to know that we only have perhaps 8 spare acres.
Yeah.
That is important information. So thank you very much for answering my question.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Liz. Okay, any other trustees have a question at this time on this draft concept idea? I can't see that.
It looks like Mike has a question.
Rick, can you see my hand? Can you?
I can't with that, but that's okay. I think Sean can see it. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, just a comment on that sketch for the township hall. I feel strongly that on one floor, a new township building should have the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, the assessor's office, and the supervisor's office, all on one floor. All these 4 departments work closely together day to day. So I just wanted to know, I want the rest of the board to know how I feel on that.
Okay, well, we're not, again,
Guys.
Mike, this is going to come forth and the department heads will all have their more time to sit down and digest this and see how it operates and understand the nuts and bolts of it. So, and that's what's going to form the dynamics, how it functions, because the department heads are here every day and they operate the township every day and service the public. We as trustees can look at this building and come up with all kind of ideas and thoughts and things of that nature. But trustees and elected officials come and go. The staff stays. And the staff is here and serves the public. So the staff and department heads, there's some department heads that have been here 15 plus years. If they don't have a fundamental understanding of how their department works, nobody does. So that's why it's so important to have their input and how this building should interact. So I appreciate that input, Mike, and we'll have further time with Nathan to have some further discussions on that. This isn't developed enough to a point, and the difficulty with this is that when you get things to a point where you're not quite sure how they're going to gel, people tend to take stuff as gospel, and it's not yet. Okay, so it's still in a work in process, and we have a lot of the fundamentals down, but it's still got a ways to go. You know, the public safety building has been gone through its spatial planning process. It is very defined, but may be subject to further revisions as we go more into this also. So these are all still parts of the process. Again, the only thing that we're really trying to do right now is carve out what we feel that we think we're going to need. And by doing all the spatial planning that Nathan and Mike have done, and Sean has done a tremendous amount of work on. And Sean, I thank you very much for all your efforts to create that, and then potentially what the buffer zone is, and then what will be left. And it may not be a huge piece of property left. It's still going to be a good sized parcel that is developable. And this is what's going to help create that sense of place and the draw that we hope that we as a board and as the committees will be able to create, along with the craftiness of the architect and the engineer to make it happen. Sean?
I was just going to say one more thing I'd add. As you can see in the RFQ Howard's put together and in the master plan that Nathan and DLZ have put together, you know, this plan doesn't stop at the borders of the township property. I mean, obviously the library is a key part of this area and it already exists. We've gone across the other side of Elizabeth Lake Road and shown that there's an opportunity to significantly develop the opposite side, the east side of Elizabeth Lake Road, and then, you know, all the way to the corner of M59 and Elizabeth. So, you know, I think it seems like there should be so much more acreage, but when you do look at how the buildings fit in, we've got build 2 lines for these buildings. They're not setback lines. So we're really trying to share parking and maximize the use of this land, you know, regionalize stormwater. I mean, all these things that will come into play will make it feel like it's a lot more than 8 additional acres, I think, because, you know, that number seemed light to me, and I'm not disagreeing with Mike. I believe him. He knows what he's doing, but you don't get that feel when you look at the concept and when you look at the plan and you consider all the uses that we can all envision down there. So I'm not discouraged by that, but it just kind of pushes us and our future partner to be more creative. So
very good.
Everybody's participation and everybody's efforts, you know, for those of us who work for the township and work with the township and are elected officials of the township, this is our job. But for those of you who have volunteered your time, you know, countless hours, coming up on 2 years, this committee started, I think, in November. It'll be 2 years that we've been talking and working and, kind of putting one foot in front of the other. So I'd like to especially recognize and thank all of the volunteers
Thank you so much.
who make it to this meeting, because your input has been invaluable, and, we certainly appreciate all of your time.
Yes, I certainly appreciate that. And the committee has been great to work with, and I always got a kick out of, we'd start the meeting and then everybody would just start going and talking about all the different ideas and different thought processes. And this is a culmination of ideas all the way through. And Mr. Powell, I really want to thank you for, being there and giving us the engineer's eye, even when 2 + 2 was not 4, and we tried to figure stuff out. And again, this is still a process. There's nothing cast in concrete here. This is like Play-Doh right now. It's to be moved around, but you have to have something to start with to give people a general idea of the direction that we're looking at or will allow possibilities to go. We could be completely blown away by somebody that'll have an idea that's completely out of the box. It's something we haven't even thought about. But the simple fact that we're putting things out there that are expanding and broadening our horizon could be a real incentive to a potential developer to look at and say, hey, you know what, they might be open to some different things, and be able to provide us with those types of things that the board can take a look at and reflect on. We don't have all the ideas, but let's surround ourselves with the people that do. And that's where we'll pick up this information. And I think that pretty well concludes your presentation tonight on the graphics, if I'm not mistaken, Nathan.
Yeah, we've gone through everything that we had prepared for tonight.
And if anyone has questions, or I don't mean to jump in on you, Rick, any questions or any other comments, I'd be happy. Please email me, and I can pass them along to Nathan. And I know they want to kind of wrap this phase and stage of their project up so they can consider it done. So I'd ask that, maybe in the next few days, or certainly within the next week, if you could get those to me, I'll certainly get them over to Nathan and Mike.
Yeah, and again, everyone, there's nothing here. These are lines on paper, okay, that at least give us some general idea. And again, we'll get into more of what's going on in the township hall and how that'll operate and things of that nature as we get a little bit further on. But right now, we're just trying to figure out how much space these things are going to take up. And we'll get into the dynamics of that. All right. Well, thank you, Nathan. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for being here this evening. And we will obviously continue this. And Sean will, be obviously the main contact point, as he has been so helpful through this whole process all along. And I certainly look forward to the next level of things that will come out here in the very near future as we start to look at what the RFQ will echo back to us. So I thank you, gentlemen, this evening. So thank you very much for being here. Okay. Moving on to item number 8 on our list. Mr. Roman, are you there somewhere?
Yeah, Rick, you want me to take this one?
Yes, sir. Since we started on it, things have changed a little bit, but we'll just kind of roll with it.
Well, we've applied for reimbursements for COVID-related expenses to the state, FEMA, as well as Oakland County. We have received $61,000 from the state of Michigan, which is for the first responder hazard pay premiums program. That $61,000 is intended to go to our public safety team, our firemen, our policemen at $1,000 each. Originally, the program was rolled out and required that we pay these out by September 30th, which is tomorrow. Even though that date has extended out, we went ahead and cut payroll checks. And I'd like permission from the board to approve paying out this $61,000.
Michael?
Again, it's money that we've gotten from the state.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's good news. Okay.
Are you looking for a motion?
Well, I think Mr. Lilly had his hand up. Mr. Lilly?
I just like to support Mike's motion for discussion.
Okay. Let me see here. All right, Mike, did you want to make a full motion or did you what?
Yeah,
where did
I'll
you
make
go?
a motion to approve paying our police and department responders $1,000 each in total, 61,000.
In conjunction with the first responders premium program.
And I will add that on to my motion.
Support. Can you hear me, Mr. Cole?
Okay, I have a motion looking for support.
Support.
Scott supported.
Yes, Mr. Ruggles.
Recording,
Okay,
you can't hear him.
Scott support. Scott supported. Thank you. Scott, did you? You're not there. I can't see you for some reason.
I'm in the dark here now.
Yes, you are now. Okay, okay. All right. All right, so I have motion, I have support. Looking for a roll call vote, Mr. Lilly?
Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
From someone that got hazard pay during the pandemic, absolutely, yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Cowell.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I'd like to say a special thank you to Treasurer Mike Roman. He's been very, very diligent on top of all of these programs. And these things have been like a moving target. And things have changed on them. And Mike has really been trying to be as mindful of it as possible. And then he and I have recently come across some other programs through the county. So hopefully we'll be able to have some other funds made available to the township. But it's too early to determine exactly what's going to happen at this time. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Andrea made the motion. Liz, you supporting?
Sure.
Liz supports. All in favor, roll call vote.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Cowell.
Yes. Good night, White Lake. Thank you, board members, and thank you all committee members and our professional guests tonight. Thank you
Good
so
night,
much.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.